In today's video, I want to tell you 3 reasons why you should use a calorie tracker and how it is mentally beneficial to you. You start thinking of a calorie tracker not just as a tedious task, but something that can benefit and even augment other aspects of your life that can really encourage a mindset shift and give you more incentive to use this. That being said, let's just jump right into it. Reason number 1, when you start using a calorie tracker, you naturally begin to become more mindful with your eating. I'm gonna repeat that again. You start to experience more mindful eating. And now I have to ask this question. How many of us from day to day really experience mindful eating? In a country where for every 3 people, 1 person is obese and overweight, I have to ask that question just because how easy is it for us to get invited to McDonald's, Burger King, that local restaurant where you eat with friends, and more or less, you're really not thinking about what you're eating. Just order that pizza, that hamburger, that fries. It's delicious, it's juicy, you like how it tastes, and sure, that's what makes food enjoyable. But how many times do we do that from a day-to-day basis where we don't even think about what we are eating? We just eat to eat. And often not, because we're so mindlessness with our eating, that naturally translates to other aspects of our lives. Guys, how you do one thing is really how you do everything. So when you start becoming mindless with how you're eating, how do you expect that not to translate into other areas of your life? It just naturally doesn't make any sense. When you become more mindful for what you're eating, not only do you take a step back to really think about what you're consuming, what's really going in your body, that's where you can really begin to track your improvement, your goals, because that's where you have to start becoming more precise. You need to have an end vision. How much weight do I want to lose? What kind of foods do I want to be consuming? Do I want to eat high protein, low carbs? Do I want to carb load a little bit more? Do I want to be in a keto diet? Those are questions you naturally start asking yourself once you develop that mindfulness. But when you're very mindless, you don't ask yourself any of those questions, and that will obviously translate into other aspects of your life. So that's really reason number 1. Reason number 2, and this is perhaps a really interesting reason, is that just like a journal you might have to track how your day is going, your calorie tracker is your food journal. Your calorie tracker is your food journal. That's such a powerful thought to think about, because once you realize it's your food journal, you realize that whatever you're tracking for that day also tells a story to you and I about how your day went, how you were feeling, etc. Again, food is a really universal aspect of our lives, guys. It ties back to how we're feeling, what we might be doing, what are we thinking for that day, so on and so on. So when you naturally start tracking your food, it becomes your journal. You'll look back at it, maybe see what you tracked from a week ago, a month ago, and it'll tell you maybe about how you felt for that day, what you were doing, were you happy, were you sad? And when you realize it's a food journal that indirectly tells us about part of your life, it becomes that much more powerful. It becomes that much more symbolic to why you're doing what you're doing. So that's really the second reason why you should use a calorie tracker, because it becomes your food journal. It becomes a journal about a part of your life that you engage in every single day. Lastly, and this is perhaps the most important one, it's free to make better choices. I'm gonna have to repeat that again. It is free to make better choices. I want you to take a second and really process that thought before I go on further. It's free to make better choices. Sometimes we forget how privileged we are to really take a step back and have the ability to not only track our food, but also be precise with the calorie content, the macros, and so on. Can you ask your grandfather, or maybe people from 50 years ago, or even 100 years ago, if they were able to even do this to the level we're able to do it now? They probably had way less of an idea of how many calories were in their food, what was associated in it, so on and so on. So when we live in a day and age where we can track our calories to the precise amount, that's incredible. But we often forget that privilege of being able to do that. And when you're able to track what you're eating and you realize it's free to make better choices, you naturally develop a gratefulness. Where does that gratefulness come from? That gratefulness comes from the mindfulness that you start practicing when you track your food. Because if you're not thinking about your food, why would you be grateful? You're not thinking about it. You're not asking yourself what's in the macros, how much calorie content is in that food. Because you're not asking yourself that question, or those questions rather, you're naturally mindlessness. But when you start practicing that mindfulness and realize it's free to make the better choice, you start becoming a lot more grateful. And that gratefulness will also impact other areas of your life as well. I've literally lost lost over 10 pounds since I started using it 40 days ago, and the journey's been great. I used to be someone who just mindlessly ate, and for a time my body could handle that. But when I reached the point where I was no longer able to do that without consequences, and I started practicing a little bit of discipline and started to see what my goals were, that's where I started to experience positive change. And you can do it too. So I hope this video helps you find the 3 reasons, the 3 psychological reasons why you want to do this. Because it's not just about you doing this, you need to also find your why behind why you're doing this. Without your why, it doesn't really matter. And with that being said, do more, think less, and I'll see you later.